to share one of my favorite sounds with you guys today. Yeah, so just like you said, some people actually do mistake this call for the call of a wolf. This is actually the common loon's call, or one of their calls. They actually have 4 main calls. So that one was their wail, which is used to find each other, so that's why you'll kind of hear it at nighttime when they're trying to find each other before they go to sleep for the evening. They also have the yodel. And the yodel is actually used as a territorial call. So to kind of let other birds and animals and loons especially know that this is their lake, this is their pond. And then we have the hoot. And this is just their sound that they make when they're communicating between mates, between parent and chick, just to talk to each other, casual. And last we have the tremolo, if I'm saying that right. And when you hear this call as they're out on the lake or the river or wherever they are, they use it as like a distress call, let them know that there's danger around, so an alarm call. But it also can be used in flight as they're flying around. A little hoot in there. When they make this call in flight, it's actually just to announce their presence. Like, hey, I'm coming in for a landing, or just passing by. So in flight, our loons, they actually migrate. So that's the main time when they're going to be flying around. Our loons up here in the Midwest in Wisconsin, they actually migrate down over 1,000 miles towards the Gulf Coast and the southeastern coast down in the southern Atlantic Ocean. And they spend the winters down there. And when they're up here, they have, I'm sorry, I forgot. I actually had a map showing their flight pattern for migration down to that coast there. But when they're up here, we see them in that classic black and white, looking sharp, not quite tuxedo-like, but they've got that checkerboard pattern on their back, the nice ring around their neck, and that sharp black bill, some white coloring on their chest. But when they migrate, a lot of people don't know this, that they actually change colors when they go south. For the winter, down there, they're gray coloring. They actually do change the coloring on their bill to become lighter. Overall, they're kind of drab looking, and they're not as vocal when they're down in the southern areas over winter. Something I think is pretty unique about the loon that I did not know originally. So they spend their time down there for the winter, and then they come back to us and take on their pretty plumage again when they arrive, because that's their mating plumage. They come back to us usually in April or very early May, and then they start mating and nesting. So they do mate typically for life as long as the mating is successful. If it's not successful, they don't successfully have a clutch of eggs, then they'll find a new mate. But they make their nest together as a pair, finding debris at the bottom of the water to pile onto some low floating vegetation along a shoreline somewhere. They usually have 1 to 2 eggs that are kind of an olive brown coloring with some speckles on it, and they're actually pretty large eggs. They get up to be around 3 inches in length. I thought that was pretty crazy, but they are large birds, so understandable there. And when they hatch, I know this is a smaller picture, but I thought it was really cute. They are actually kind of really a dark brown or black, fluffy little thing. And they can pretty much swim immediately after birth, but they'll ride on the backs of their parents for about a week. About 50% of their time for that first week is spent on their backs for warmth and protection from predators, just to give them a little bit of rest too. And so then after time, they will kind of be shoved off the back and they'll be forced to make it on their own. And actually, about the second day after they're born, they don't go back to the nest anymore. They spend all their time out on the water with mom and dad. So I thought that was unique. The chicks are fed by their parents until they are approximately 8 weeks old, and then they start to feed themselves at that time. And they can fly at about 12 weeks old, so about 3 months old they can start to fly, which is perfect timing for them to start thinking about migration again. Let's see here, where is that at? So the rest of the summer then, after they have their chicks and they're just hanging out, is spent primarily on feeding, preening, and protecting their territory. So these birds are divers. They are constructed to be able to dive down very deep. They can do this because unlike other bird species, they have solid bones instead of hollow bones. And so with the solid bone structure, they can dive down about 250 feet deep. They can hold their breath for up to 5 minutes. Typically, they only hold their breath about a minute on average. And they like to fish for things like fish and aquatic macroinvertebrates such as crayfish. Sometimes they might snag a frog, but they've got this really sharp beak to help them spear their prey. And again, they like fish primarily, so minnows, perch, smaller northern pike, things like that. I thought this was really cute with a little baby eating some food, getting a snack on. So thinking about those solid bones though, it makes it that much more difficult for them to get up into flight. So I thought that was pretty crazy that they can actually still fly all of those miles. They can fly up to 400 miles in a day. They can fly at speeds of 80 miles per hour. But because of their solid bones instead of hollow bones, it takes them anywhere between 100 to 600 feet for them to take off. They start running across the surface of the water, and depending on how long the runway is, they might have to make a few laps until they can get up into the air. So again, preening, they got to keep themselves clean. They usually bathe about once a day, preening all their feathers and realigning the feathers. They have a preen gland that they get oil from to coat their feathers with to keep them waterproof, since they are primarily water birds. And then usually when they are done preening, they'll stretch out their wings, stretch their neck, and shake it all out. So usually if you see a loon doing that on the lake, you know they've probably just finished up their preening for the day. And they are very, very territorial. You won't usually see more than one pair of loons on a lake. And if another loon tries to come in, specifically usually it's a younger male trying to come in and take over the territory, then the males will usually fight, and a lot of times it ends in the death of one of the males. And they usually will dive down and then swim up really fast and try to spear each other with their sharp beaks. So it's very dangerous. And then I just found some other fun facts I wanted to share with you guys. So their name, the loon, actually comes from their clumsy appearance when they're walking on land. Since they are so spectacularly adapted to living in an aquatic habitat and then flying in the air, they have their legs are positioned very far back on their body, and so they can't really walk on land because they're so top heavy that they just kind of fall over. So they really can't walk, so they look funny and they're called loons because of that. And their closest relative is actually the penguin, and that's because penguins also have those solid bones and are deep divers like the loons. So I thought that was unique that they're so far from each other, but yet they're closely related. They actually sleep overnight in deep water to stay away from predators along the shoreline. And Alaska has our highest loon population in all of the United States, but in the continental U.S., Minnesota has the highest population of loons, with Wisconsin having about half the population size of Minnesota, but we're still pretty far out there for all of the other competing states of loon population. And they live on average around 20 years, but they can get up to 30 years lifespan, so that was pretty cool to work with them on. So yeah, these are just some of the things that I learned about the loon, and it's definitely those species where you can see migrating through twice a year around Schmeeckle Reserve here